In just a few short weeks, Anthology Together is bringing you the best of ed tech at the Walt Disney World Swan and Dolphin Resort in Orlando, Florida. Join the global education community to hear about what's next in the future of learning, get a first-hand look at the latest innovations, and discover new insights to help both your institution and students achieve their goals. The future of learning is here, and there's no better place to see it than at Anthology Together 2022. The event kicks off on July 11th, so register today at www.anthology.com/together. Employers need highly qualified and diverse talent to grow. Unmuddle is a marketplace to help you with workforce and upskill needs. To learn more, go to unmuddle.com/employers. That's UNMUDL.com/employers. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Dr. Joe Salustio back with you again. As you guys well know, and I say this basically on every single episode, I know it gets annoying a little bit, but we are rapidly closing in on 150,000 downloads of this podcast in our 450 or so episodes that we've done. Interviewed 150 something college presidents at this point and have a pretty good idea on what's going on in and around higher education. But we don't stop and we're never satisfied. So we like to take it to the next level. So we, as you may have seen recently, have partnered with Fierce Education and QuestX to bring EdUp Experience episodes to Fierce Ed's 100,000 weekly subscribers to give them another way to experience higher ed news, how higher ed professionals can experience professional development, and what the heck is going on in higher ed and what the future is going to look like. Fierce Ed and their managing director, Elliot Markowitz, we're absolutely honored to partner. And you're going to be seeing more of Fierce Ed and EdUp's partnership as we roll on. And so these partnerships are really important for the future of higher ed as we bring you what's happening. And speaking of the future of higher ed, I've got a guest with me today who's going to talk all about visual systems and what the heck that means to higher ed. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. His name is Darryl Krall, and he's National Sales Manager of the Visual Systems Group at Panasonic Connect. Darryl, what is up?
Hey, Joe, how are you? Thanks for having me today. Very excited and always wanting and willing to talk about what's going on in education with Panasonic Connect.
Okay, Darryl. So here's the first question. We're going to assume that somebody has not heard of Panasonic or Panasonic Connect. Can you talk a little bit about what Panasonic Connect does? What do you guys do just in general, level set for the audience?
Absolutely. So Panasonic has been in business for over 100 years. In the last 40 plus years, Panasonic has been in classrooms around the US. We have a new name, Panasonic Connect, which kind of embodies what we're doing, not only in the education space, but in collaborative learning and in other areas like that. But like I said, there are very few companies who provide the breadth and scope of products and solutions in the educational space like Panasonic Connect. So today we're very excited to talk to you about a lot of these updates and new technologies that we're rolling out to improve the student learning achievement.
When people hear the name Panasonic, they think about all of the commercials and things that they've seen in the past. And I'm assuming, and for the audience to connect these dots, that this is Panasonic's evolution, organizational evolution, as they look at what the future looks like.
Absolutely. I mean, basically, a lot of people are familiar with Panasonic as a consumer products type company, TVs, VCRs, DVD, Blu-ray, whatever. But really in the last 5 to 10 years, we've become more of a B2B company, offering different devices and hardware, software, and most importantly, professional services for that connected enterprise. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing in the higher education space. And we continue to work very closely with higher education leaders and listen to their concerns to try and improve that environment that has become a very large enterprise environment for many institutions.
We push the limits of science and technology.
I love it. I will tell you, boy, there used to be a Panasonic commercial of the guy's tie blowing backwards and like the TV was blasting out wind. I think it was Panasonic anyway. But you talk about how evolution, companies evolve, learning has to evolve in order to equip students with the skills that they need to succeed in the workforce. And organizationally, companies have to evolve in the way that they do business. And so that managed services and providing the advice and technology that institutions need to be able to advance is the way of the future, right? Because technology moves so fast, it's impossible almost to keep your hand on the pulse. It's one of the things that we struggle with in higher ed is what does the future look like? AR and VR, and what does that mean for a learner, and hybrid and online and all of these things. Can you talk about what the landscape looks like right now? What kind of conversations you're having over at
Absolutely.
Panasonic Connect? And let's just start there.
It has changed dramatically in the last 5 years, but at rapid speed over the last 2.5 years. So right now, when Panasonic has been working with the educational vertical for many, many years, but we're currently preparing for our connected classroom solution. We'll be showcasing at InfoComm in June.
Amazing.
Amazing it is. Thank you, Joe. But one of the things, we have all the pieces. We make PTZ cameras, projectors, we make pro audio systems, and everything else that goes into the classroom. So now we've pulled that together to make it easier for students to learn in these environments, because we get feedback from the students of what those rooms need to look like. We hear back from the educational leaders who are designing these rooms and the integrators who actually typically will install these rooms. So we're taking all the pieces that we have, adding some additional technologies into this Panasonic connected classroom solution. And we're excited to showcase that at InfoComm here in June. One of the other things that we're also excited to be talking about in June is the relaunch of our Panasonic Connect Higher Education Advisory Council. We've had a higher education steering committee for probably about 5 or 6 years now, where we're talking with higher education institutions around the US on a regular basis. And so the relaunch, because I think everyone's, wants to be more in person and engaged. So with this relaunch, we'll be talking about what we're going to be doing here in the next 12 months. And we're targeting to have probably 4 roundtable discussions. They'll be in that hybrid environment, which we'll talk more about, which means we'll be in person, as well as have it on a platform where people can come into the meeting virtually. And what's excited about this is we're putting the finishing touches on our roundtable for July 13th with our faculty members who are now able to come in from Japan at an institution somewhere in Southern California, Joe. That's all I'm going to tell you about it right now.
The mystery.
Yes, and the intrigue.
And there's like 100 institutions in Southern California, so it could be anywhere. And we're going to stalk you until we find out. That's pretty incredible. It's great to hear that you have a higher ed advisory council. How it could operate without me on it is one question we're going to have to figure out. But secondarily to that, let me ask you this question. As you look at what the connected classroom looks like, as you release this in the future, how much variability is there in the advice you get? Like there must be so many differing opinions on what that has to look like for this program, for this institution, for this college of whatever. I mean, there must be so much opinion to work through.
And that's the great thing. I'm also on the executive board of an organization for higher education called CCUMC. That's the Consortium of College and University Media Centers. And we're also having an in-person conference at the University of Central Florida in Orlando in October. But we're constantly getting feedback from the customers. And you're absolutely right. There's not a hybrid environment that one size fits all. That's why you can buy, different color cars, or, all different choices are good. But as you start to hone in on what are the requirements for individual institutions, the great thing about Panasonic Connect is that we have the flexibility to scale it. And we typically come to market with a good, better, and best approach. So maybe an entry-level system, mid-range, high-end, and then after that, you go into more custom design. But most institutions have told us that they want consistency, reliability, and know that the classroom will be up and running to teach the students. And that's probably the number one thing. What you end up putting in that room can vary, but just having that consistency so that those classes can take place is probably the number one importance for most institutions.
It's really one of the most interesting and fascinating things that comes along with technology is cost, right? And how institutions think about budgets and cost. and how often we forget that technology helps retention. Technology helps outcomes. Connected campuses helps recruit students. Are those conversations that are tough to have with higher ed? Because higher ed isn't known to be as, look, and we've said this a million times on this podcast, as have so many of our guests, presidents and otherwise, that higher ed doesn't move that fast. And technology and technology companies, pandemic has helped higher ed move a little bit faster, but we depend so importantly on technology companies to help advance teaching and learning, but we still have those bureaucracies built in, budgets and lack of understanding on how technology can help us, create outcomes that we want. Are those easy conversations to have with higher ed? Or are we coming around to being more progressive?
I think so. It also goes back to the other importance for any institution is what? Their brand, right? So their brand
100%.
is associated with their organization. And if you've got, transparency film, and maybe some of your listeners are not familiar with such technology, if you have older technology that doesn't engage the students, you don't maybe get that level of student in a STEM or a STEAM environment. So you're absolutely right.
When you say transparency film, are you talking about like an overhead projector?
Yes, exactly.
Oh my
like
gosh.
the overhead. That's how far back.
100%.
Whoa. Thanks for taking me back.
Of course, and how many institutions are still using chalkboards? There are some chalkboards still in classrooms, right?
But I didn't know they made chalk anymore.
They might, maybe they don't. They have to recycle it out of something.
Yep.
But so those, you ask a great question, because we have great conversations, and they're probing questions, and depending upon who you're having that conversation with, it can be a bit challenging. But I'll tell you, another organization that we're actively involved in is an organization called HETMA. You can go to hetma.org, but it's the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance. And they've really kind of brought those conversations up to the forefront. And we were a founding member with them, and basically continue to support them and really want to have those conversations, because you're absolutely right. We could tell you all how great and wonderful our projectors and cameras and pro audio are, but how does it fit into that environment? How does it fit into that enterprise? And how do you manage it? Just to buy technology, and then maybe 3 to 5 years, it's like, well, now what do we do with it, right? They're not using it, or you buy the wrong technology and it collects dust. So having those conversations up front at the many levels within an institution is very important. So we do provide the right solutions for them.
The vision of Unmuddle for the future is that the high cost, rigidity, and uncertain reward of pursuing higher education would be replaced with an economical, transparent, infinitely adjustable sequence of lifelong learning stints in which the employer, college, and learner are in constant communication about current needs, and the system can respond quickly to each. Employers need highly qualified and diverse talent to grow. Unmuddle is a marketplace that will help you with workforce and upskilling needs. To learn more, go to unmuddle.com/employers. Yeah, that's really good to talk about, because I will tell you, I mean, I work at a university. I'm starting up our online initiative. It's resourced, and we talk about technology all the time. And it's funny because when we're talking about it, I'm like, okay, maybe we can get by a year or two at this, and then we got to look at it again, because technology changes so fast. And higher ed is always, we put in these big technologies and then we don't review them as often as we should for advancement or evolution. And even the way a student chooses education and how they experience and want to experience teaching and learning has changed over the last couple of years, right? I mean, we have a cell phone in our pocket, and in some way, at some time, somebody's going to say, I want to learn on this thing. And, we have to figure out how to deliver it that way, because that's the way students are learning. They're learning on TikTok half the time these days. Can't get kids off TikTok. So it's an ever evolving proposition and responsibility to evolve technology. Is that something that you provide, like this ongoing, let's review? Because I think that's important to kind of nudge along institutions as we look at teaching and learning in the future.
Absolutely. A perfect example of that is we worked with institutions, and they've put a classroom, connected classroom in, and then guess what? They had a semester or two where they actually videotaped how the professor came in, how the students came in, how they interacted with the room, and you looked at that data. Because for years we would throw technology into a classroom and say, oh, it works, that's good, but how are the students using it, how are the faculty using it, and how can they use that, all these great new technologies that help them collaborate and get a better student learning achievement experience in that classroom and around the campus. So we'll talk more about what you're saying, like engaging in, different displays and immersive. We've been working with institutions where they literally are taking projectors, because we have the ability to do texture mapping. You can have a 360-degree classroom with an image and multiple images around the entire classroom. So it's that more immersive experience. And so those are some of the trends that we're seeing. And whether it's a medium-sized, smaller community college, those technologies are just becoming part of the fiber of their curriculum, really.
Wow. All right. So there's so much there you ran through. Let's talk about, because there's so many institutions that still have students on ground and students that are in hybrid classrooms, and the visual technology and having visual technology can directly enhance that student's life on campus. Can you talk about ways that visual technology can enhance campus life?
Absolutely. One of the ways that we're enhancing the classroom experience is our new lecture capture system. So lecture capture has been around for a while. There's multiple flavors and different ways to do it, but the way in which we can deploy that in more of an enterprise manner, because of AV over IP, so things on the network, it's not a closed system.
What?
Let's say that again.
What?
AV over IP. So you're putting all of our products, all of our technologies on the network, but because it's not requesting a ton of bandwidth, students, if they want to stay in their dorm that day because it's snowing, they can watch it from their phone or on their computer. And so with our auto tracking cameras, and our pro audio, you can, number one, hear the professor, which is as important, if not more important than the video, right? Because if you can't hear the professor, if you can't hear the professor, then they're not going to stay engaged. So with our lecture capture system, auto tracking cameras, and then our pro audio, you've got an easy way to create content, manage the video content from that classroom. And then if the students want to watch it again, or wanted to learn a little bit more detail about what was talked about in that class, or they couldn't make it to class, they can they can watch it from wherever they want, and they can also rewatch it at any point in time. So those are some of the technologies in the classroom that we see becoming, yes, it's been around for a while, but more and more institutions are looking to make it a more manageable system, because they may have 200 classrooms, they may have 300 classrooms. So they maybe have 4 to 6, if they're lucky, people that support these rooms. And so having the technology reliable, networkable, manageable, you can actually manage the rooms, from our early warning software. So those are the things that I think are making these technologies become more prolific throughout the campuses.
It creates true hybrid learning, right? You could learn it synchronously if you want to show up for class. It's asynchronous if it's recorded and you want to go back later and pull the details out. So it creates true hybrid learning when you can do that in a classroom. I think a lot of higher ed institutions did do that as a result of the pandemic, obviously, because they had to. And then the question that many of them have had is, what do we do with it now? We had to do it in an emergency situation. Are we keeping this kind of technology? Are we scaling this kind of technology? How do we elevate this kind of technology for the future of what we believe learning will be? That's been a big sticking point for many people as I've spoken to them, Darryl, of college, faculty or presidents, to say, okay, we did this, but now what?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what do you say? What do you say to institutions that come in and say, we had this, we're doing it kinda? I mean, do you pull in information from the higher ed advisory group and say, this is where it's going and this is how to get there?
I would say that they're telling us that this is the way that it's going, because if you look at the last 2 years, and if you're targeting fundamentally maybe Generation Alpha, who will be in college here in the next number of years, they kind of grew up with that. So it's almost, I wouldn't say a necessity, but more and more students have learned in that environment. Now, how do we take it so that it can be a much more interactive, a much more creative way in which students can learn, because I think if they've grown up with a tablet or they're swiping, they've been, maybe they're not reading as many books because they're reading everything electronically. The way in which they are wired and the way in which they approach learning is very, very different than it was 5 or even 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it will be 5 years from now.
Yes.
Talk about the work that you're doing with cyber learning pioneer Dr. Sunny Magana.
Absolutely. We've been working with Dr. Sunny Magana actually even pre-pandemic. And so some of the things that we also noticed and recognized and received data on is thinking of a high school person right now, that pandemic slide that they experienced, because just because you were in a class on Zoom, what was that level of learning experience? So we're trying to help faculty catch up, and even K through 12 teachers help them use some of these new technologies. And so Project Moonshot EDU is the offering where it's professional development that we provide to K through 12 and higher education to help them better understand how to utilize technology, how to change the digital pedagogy in which they're teaching students at any age. And that's the other thing that all this hybrid and online does, and we briefly touched on it, but you can open up your student population. You don't have to be in XYZ town, right? You could be anywhere in the world fundamentally. And so those are some of the things where institutions are realizing it's a way to kind of expand their canvas of potential student population.
I feel like we brushed over that website so quickly for that resource website. So we got to bring it back again, but I got to get you primed up for it. Ready? I want you to bring it.
Attention.
What was that website one more time?
For which website? For Dr. Sunny Magana?
Yeah, the Moonshot.
Oh yeah, so Project Moonshot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop that up for you.
Well, it wasn't a website; it was Project Moonshot. So
that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah.
You were so passionate about what you're talking about. I was like, oh, what was that?
Hey, Darryl. Yeah, a sound effect. Hey, slow down.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get one of those.
So Project Moonshot is a professional development subscription-based service. We do have some websites that we can follow up with you on, and it basically is an annual subscription. We're building this community, one for K through 12 and one for higher education, that, as I had mentioned, helps teachers and faculty teach better, and literally documented it has improved, doubled student learning achievement once they start using this T3 framework. And as you know, as an educator, that's pretty important.
It's big. Mm-hmm. Well, I love it, Darryl, and what you guys are doing at Panasonic Connect. We like to end our episodes with the same two questions to every guest. Number one, what did we not say about? Sorry, I'm just choking on my own talk. So sometimes when I talk so much, I just start choking. Anyway, what did we not say about Panasonic Connect that needs to be said? What the work you're doing, events you have coming up, any big reveals, like, you make a mistake and tell me the Southern California University that all this is happening at, anything that you want to add. And then secondarily to that, what do you see as the future of higher education?
I think it's going to continue to expand and grow in the way in which we can provide better solutions to the student to make them, more productive to society, and that's a huge focus for us. Excuse me. And then the other thing, we talked about some other applications of immersive. We're doing a lot in esports, which also is being used as a recruitment tool for institutions, because they're
big
targeting
esports fan right here. Absolutely.
Oh, there you go. So you know how important that is. And back in the day, if you were playing Nintendo, for those of you who don't know what Nintendo is, but what was the value of that 25 years ago? Now, some of these students are making some pretty serious bank playing esports, but many institutions recognize that that can be part of their offering to make that on-campus experience for students that much better. And we're doing things in digital signage where we're helping students find places or get acclimated more quickly. So there's the great thing about education is, I think you're right, they sometimes are a little bit slow to make the change, but I think they're slowly embracing all the different things that technology and this digital pedagogy world that people have recognized can take us into that next generation.
Well, you heard it here, ladies and gents. His name is Darryl Krall, and he is, here we go, let me do this properly for you, Darryl, on the way out. Darryl Krall, he's National Sales Manager of the Visual Systems Group at Panasonic Connect.
Yeah.
That's the work that they're doing right over there.
Yeah.
Darryl, how was your EdUp experience today?
Outstanding. I can't wait to have more conversations, and we'll talk to you more about our Higher Education Advisory Council and all the other wonderful things that we're doing. Joe, I really appreciate the time today.
And Darryl, how can we connect with you if we have anybody here of the higher ed community that wants to connect with Panasonic Connect or reach out to you with questions, thoughts? Where can we find you? How do we get in contact with you?
You can look me up on LinkedIn, Darryl, Darryl. Krall is Krall. Or shall I throw out an email? Is that appropriate?
You shall.
Joe?
Well, that's up to you. You might have a lot of people emailing you.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Darryl, Darryl .Krall at us.panasonic.com.
Well, there it is, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd. Employers use Unmuddle to source talent directly from community colleges with a click of a button to commission needed training to develop existing talent. Highly qualified and diverse talent is absolutely necessary to grow in today's workforce. Try your free subscription today at unmuddle.com/employers.